In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, Paul makes the case that if Jesus has not raised from the dead, if that did not really happen, then our faith is useless, and we are to be pitied going around believing this stuff. And he's right, because we claim that we have been forgiven our sins by God in the flesh, and the evidence Jesus gave for who he was is that he raised from the dead. So if he didn't raise from the dead, then that's all in vain. And there's three basic myths that center around the resurrection of Jesus Christ that people try to put forward so that they can push that aside as if it did not happen. The first one is that it's the wrong tomb. See, if you remember the story, the next day after he was buried, the women went down to, some of the women disciples went down to the tomb to kind of finish some burial ritual stuff. Well, they get there, they find the stone of the tomb rolled away, and they freak out and they run back and tell the disciples that he's risen, and it was all a big misunderstanding because, well, they went to the wrong tomb. Well, here's the thing about that. The truth is, there were so many people who could have verified which tomb Jesus was actually buried in. Joseph of Arimathea, who donated the tomb for Jesus to be buried, the women were actually there when Jesus was buried, so they saw which tomb it was. The Jewish leaders were afraid that someone might try to steal the body and claim resurrection, so they put a guard of Roman soldiers around the tomb. So you have the leaders, you have the soldiers, all would have known where he was buried. Plus, I'm sure that there were other people, disciples and whatnot, who were present. So any number of people could have verified that the tomb, which one it actually was, if the women had gotten the wrong tomb. The other one is the stolen body myth. Here's the idea, that the disciples came in and they took the body and then claimed resurrection. Well, the problem with that is that it would have been impossible. Remember, I mentioned that as Roman guards, the Jewish leaders were so scared of this very thing happening that they went to Pilate and said, hey, can we have some soldiers to guard the tomb just in case his disciples try to steal the body, because they were saying that he's going to raise it again. So let's keep that from happening. So one, there were Roman guards around the tomb. Two, the stone that is rolled in front of the tomb, some estimate it could have been up to 2 tons. Okay, you do not move that easily and quietly and stealthily in the middle of the night. So these disciples, who a few days before were scared and fearful and running for their lives and hiding for fear of the same authorities that just crucified their leader, now get up the gumption to go and the courage to go and overcome, overtake, overpower anywhere between 4 to 16 Roman soldiers. Okay, these are fishermen. These are just your common folk are going to go overpower some Roman soldiers, move aside this massive heavy stone, and take the body, and do all of this without anybody seeing it being done. Crazy thing is, this is actually recorded as a conspiracy in the Gospels. The Jewish leaders tell the soldiers, hey, tell people that they came and stole the body while you were sleeping, and they bribed the guards to perpetuate this story. And so that one could not have happened. The Bible points out that they tried to say it happened, but it would have been impossible for the disciples to have come and stolen the body. The third one is the swoon theory, or the playing dead myth. And it's this idea that Jesus succumbed to exhaustion and maybe some blood loss, and he fainted on the cross, and they took him down and thought he was dead, and they put him in the tomb, but turns out, oh, look, he's actually alive. A couple of days later, he revives from his swoon, from his fainting, and is taken away for medical care, I guess. Here's the deal. Look what Jesus went through. First, every trial he was at, someone was beating him. So soldiers dealing roughly with him. And then he was actually beaten, flogged with the cat of nine tails, which rips away your skin and exposes organs and bone. Some people don't even survive the flogging to make it to their crucifixion. That's how bad it is. Then he was crucified, nails through his arms and feet. Remember, in his feet they drove nails, not just his hands, but his feet. Then he had to carry his cross to be crucified, and then once he was crucified, they went to make sure he was dead. They weren't sure, so they shoved a spear in his side. Okay? So after all of that, they put him in the tomb, but he wasn't really dead for all of that. And he comes out, and this guy gets around. Okay, he appears to the disciples on multiple occasions in Jerusalem. He appears to them in Galilee, which is quite a distance away. And just a couple days after his resurrection, Jesus is walking 7 miles from Jerusalem to the town of Emmaus, talking with some of the disciples. So this idea that Jesus could have just fainted is ridiculous. There is no way, one, that he could have survived those wounds, and two, even if he had, he would have died shortly thereafter. And three, there's certainly no way that he could have been appearing to all these people in all these different places. The guy gets around for someone who has had nails driven through his feet. I stub my toe and I can't walk. So the main myths and ideas that get put forth to show that the resurrection was not possible, they themselves are not possible. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is one of the most historically attested events of the ancient world. We know it happened. And you can believe whatever you want to about it, but here's the fact. Jesus of Nazareth was crucified on a Roman cross, and he was put in a tomb, and 3 days later, that tomb is empty. And the only story that can account for it is that he rose from the dead. All of the others fall short and are, well, myths.